But first off, if you just have any advice that you could give to young people like us, probably interested in maybe meditation or spirituality, um,
Mhm.
if you could share on that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, the first thing I want to make very clear is anytime I speak about anything, it is in no way something that I believe is a definitive truth. It is just directly from my own experience. And that's all I can offer anyone else is my experience. What's worked for me, what hasn't. Some things have worked for a little while, sometime, and then, they don't work. And that's why, if any of you, familiar with any of my books, you'll see that I talk about basically all of the great wisdom traditions. I find the teachings and practices from all of them personally very beneficial. Not every aspect of all of them, but something from all of them. Um, but not just strictly that. For me, spirituality certainly does happen on the meditation cushion, or if you're into yoga, it happens, on your yoga mat. But to me, that's kind of the where we ground ourselves in it. But if we're not taking it with us when we get up and go about our day, then what's the point? What's the purpose? So for me, skateboarding can be just as spiritual of an activity as meditating can. If I'm there mindfully while I'm skateboarding, I'm in meditation. If I'm playing my guitar or drums or bass or whatever, playing in a band, that is a form of meditation. As you mentioned, I right now I actually am just doing my own kind of solo ambient stuff, but over the years, I well, I still do kirtan a little bit, but there was a point where I was simultaneously playing in a kirtan band, playing drums, and then doing a two-piece doom metal band where I was playing bass, and it was just like this really low tuned, heavy distorted bass, and I was a vocalist, like real screamy stuff. And so I'd be practicing that one day and then kirtan the next. But to me, they were both equally spiritual experiences because it was coming from the heart. It was very cathartic for me. Um, so I think that not everybody, but a lot of people kind of pigeonhole themselves into what spirituality needs to look like or sound like. Um, and there's a wonderful author, he's passed on. He was a Buddhist scholar. His name was Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche.
Right.
And he wrote a book called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. And I try to read that book once a year. And the reason I do that is because it keeps my ass in check. It's like I start thinking I'm making all this spiritual progress. Like, wow, look at you. Like, you've renounced this or you're doing that. And then I read this book and it's like, oh fuck, yeah, it's ego. So a lot of times, and myself included, when people freshly step onto the spiritual path, they get very involved in the clothes and the sayings and the malas, and there's nothing wrong at all with any of that. Let me be very clear. But in the beginning, for a lot of us, and again, myself included, what we're actually doing is spiritualizing our ego. We're just shifting one identity for another. He
Wait, shoot. It looks like you're breaking up here,
calls you to
Chris.
do. Oh,
Could you repeat that last sentence? There was like probably like five
so,
seconds where you were breaking up.
sorry, I was saying you don't have to change anything about yourselves. Be who you are, do what you do. Of course, take up a practice. I think sangha or satsang or some kind of spiritual fellowship like you guys are doing right there is important. To have friends on the path to bounce ideas off of to help support you. If you feel called to get a formal teacher, go for it. I never have. I've been blessed to study under Ram Dass and Ken Wilber and some other greats, but never formally as a student. Um, but really, make art. Like play your guitars, laugh, watch Seth Rogen movies. I mean, you know, I watch The Simpsons. I'm looking at my DVD collection right now. It consists of like The Office, The Simpsons, a bunch of horror movies. Um, I like what I like, and I'm just honest with myself about it. And if there comes a time where it's like, I don't feel that's appropriate, then so be it. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, I've been on this path for about 15 years, um, and I feel like I am very honest to myself. And in being honest to myself, I don't deprive myself of things that I personally enjoy. But along with that, I have a very dedicated spiritual practice as well. So there's some of my thoughts. I would love to hear what some of you think, if that's the way this format works. I'm
Oh
not
yeah, well,
entirely sure.